The world's most influential LGBTQ business leaders. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the focus group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We are the focus group. Be sure to learn all about us at focusgroupradio.com. You'll also see our sponsors there, including Deep Discount, and you can click on them and start shopping away. And also find our companion podcast there, which is TFG Unbuttoned, located there, which is released every Tuesday. So, Mr. Nash, we're all done with Criterion Month as we're now heading into October. So, how'd the crowd do with Criterion Month?
The biggest Criterion Month we've had since we began playing the game here on the podcast. If you listen to TFG Unbuttoned, our companion podcast, you'll know that everybody that sent in guesses basically got it right. I think there were one or two ringers out of the whole bunch. Some movies people got right away, some didn't, but I'm going to wait for one more week, and then we're going to play. I'm going to reveal what the clues were on our next show, because time delay, stuff like that. But congrats to everybody, and thank you for playing. Hilarious. I'm still in wonder at one particular clue that one person got so far. And I don't want to, I'm wondering, like, how did they, and then I thought, no, it's like me. I'll hear a piece of audio or music and I can identify where it came from. So I do believe that everybody loves some of these movies. So it was a great month. And I want to thank all our listeners for playing and submitting stuff. Good.
I got my hair cut I still have this respiratory thing if you hear me going in and out or coughing.
You sound much better, Tim.
But I went and got my hair cut because I have to make these appointments now in advance. So I go to a place here called the Grateful Head. There's a guy there named Aaron.
By the way, that's a good name. That's a good
Grateful
name.
Head. And I used to be able to just walk in. Well, now you have to make appointments. So my hair was growing long, and then I thought, well, I'll make an appointment. So I got in there too early, I think. So I didn't want to waste the haircut. So he goes, well, we'll just cut it a little shorter. So I got this very short haircut, if you probably noticed.
I think it looks great.
And but it was funny because as he was cutting my hair toward the end, he went to trim which I do myself, but he went to trim my eyebrows. And he says, it's really funny. You've got grayish hair, but your eyebrows are jet black. And I said, yeah, I haven't done anything to them. I said, maybe I should dye my hair. He's like, no. And I said, why? I see all these guys. He goes, I see these folks that come in. And he goes, and you see the men around town here that are in their 70s and 80s with the hair dye. And we started laughing. He goes, it seeps through to the scalp. And he goes, it just looks horrible. So, but then I looked, I didn't notice. I guess my eyebrows are black. They're brown
dark.
Or whatever they are.
Yeah.
But my hair went gray.
I thought you were going to tell the story where when we were on Sirius XM satellite radio, Tim came into the studio one day, and it was about 5 or 10 minutes before you actually said, does anybody notice anything? And it took us a while to realize that you had no eyebrows.
Yeah, and I cut them off by accident. I took that zipper, the
comb,
whatever you call it.
Well, you'd watched your barber do it, where they do the comb one way and they run a electric thing over it.
Yeah, the electric shears or whatever. I have a pair that's kind of broken down that I still will use for that. But yeah, I don't know what happened. Cut them all off.
And once we saw him with no eyebrows, you couldn't unsee it. Once Tim pointed it out, it was out of the bag, and we're like, oh my God, you have no eyebrows. And so every expression he made was a little less expressive because there weren't the eyebrows doing the job they do of like alerting us to like, ooh, one is up.
Yeah, no, I eyebrows. I used to always, well, and I just always remembered, you would see somebody like, what was his name on 60 Minutes? The guy at the end that would always do the commentary.
Oh, with the huge eyebrows, right?
Yeah, why does his name escape me? Andy Rooney.
Yes.
And
you ever wonder why? That was him, right?
Right. And I'm thinking, here's a man on national TV, well-known, well-regarded journalist, but had the worst eyebrows. And I thought, why doesn't somebody cut them?
I
would
wonder
have thought when he
about
got his
that.
haircut, unless he told the people, "Don't cut my eyebrows."
They
were out of control.
There's a guy here on our local Spectrum, like New York One News. I don't see him as much as I used to, but he was like a pop culture Broadway reporter, and he actually combed his eyebrows.
Oh my God.
So you know how they were spiking up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen this. And it just became kind of a trademark of his, right? Like I think if like there was a caricature ever done of him, the artist would have definitely done the up eyebrows. But I agree with you. I remember when Andy Rooney was towards the end of it, when he gave his final.
Yeah.
In fact, he was in his office in front of a manual typewriter when he gave his final goodbye on 60 Minutes, and that's kind of all I could think of was the typewriter, some of the books on the shelf, and the eyebrows, which is weird.
Eyebrows. Unless that was his trademark thing, and don't touch them, and I've got these long eyebrows. But they'd had to have been uncomfortable, because if mine get a little long, I don't know if you're the same way. I'll pull them out. I'll grab it and pull it.
I don't ever pull them out, but I definitely keep an eye
Trim
on
them.
it. But I have lighter hair. And, as far as your haircut goes, I love when people... someone said to me the other day, they were complaining about their hair, and I'm like, I just put up a finger, and I'm like, wait a minute. You have hair. So whatever is happening today, 3 weeks from now, it's not going to be the same, and it grows out, whatever, but you have hair.
Yeah.
I don't have such an option.
How old were you when you started losing your hair? Do you remember?
28, 27, 28. I remember going to the dermatologist one day, and I was getting something for my skin, and she's like, do you want to, your hair is thinning. It started in the back, typical, right?
Right.
Try Rogaine. So I start doing the Rogaine, and this is when it first came out, and it worked. And I remember going back
it did
to
really?
her.
It did
Oh,
work?
yeah, it grew hair. And I'm like, well, great. It grew the hair back, and now I'm all done, right? No, you have to use it for the rest of your life. I remember sitting there, and I said, no, I'm out. I'm just not.
You didn't
gonna
want to do
that.
it for the rest of your life?
Nope.
I wonder if you put it on now, would it grow?
I don't know. And I always see things on TV, or I read about things like they've unlocked the hair growth secret, or male pattern baldness. And I think if they've unlocked it, we would all know about it, right?
Well, they've unlocked that. Yeah, right. The weight loss thing, all the stuff.
Hey, that weight loss thing. Do you know anybody who's? I think we talked about this once before. Do you know anybody who's done Wegovy or Ozempic?
Oh yeah, and have lost a lot of weight. But I don't know.
There's something else. Does muscle tone go away too, or I can't quite figure it out. But I've seen a couple friends who have done it, and they look like they have the body of a 30-year-old again. But something's different. Like it's either facial. I can't figure it out. But you have to stay on that as well, right?
Yeah, you have to. What it's supposed to do, I guess, is it teaches you not to eat so much or eat smaller portions.
Curbs your appetite.
Yeah. But in some cases, people get either constipated or just some sort of stomach paralysis. I don't know if they know enough about it. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Remember the drug they took was when we were, God, it was probably 15 years ago or so, when they were doing the drug that was going to take the fat out of your body.
Yes.
What was it, Olestra or something? Or there was.
Oh no, that was the substitute fats.
Right, substitute fats. But there was some sort of pill that you could take, and they used to call it the BSP, the brown stain problem. But you would take this pill, which you could still buy, I guess, over the counter now. But you would take this pill, and it would make you go to the bathroom. Remember, poop it out. I took the pill for a little while, and all I did was run around looking for a bathroom. So I'm like, I can't do this.
Tim, remember we were working on Franny, our cartoon?
Yes.
And our friend Jim Anderson, his studio did some of our animation work. The animation studio is called BSP, and they named it for the brown spot problem. So you have a good memory. That's I forgot about that.
I got to remember what the name of that pill was, but you could still apparently get it. But it's supposedly so it would take the fat out of your body. So if you ate potato chips or pizza or something something heavily fat, this pill would shoot it out. But there was really no control. It was coming.
I know that there are legitimate weight issues, the physiological, the whole bit. But, some of this stuff just, I don't even know why people would bother, especially when you're watching one of the ads on TV and the list of possible side effects goes from your index finger up to your elbow. And you're like, oh, my God, am I going to really take that, right?
I still say if you watch YouTube or TikTok or any of the social media stuff, There's lots of people that say the same thing over and over. If you look at any of those, the video or the shows of Soul Train or American Bandstand, the kids dancing, maybe 1 in 500 kid is overweight. Generally, everybody is in pretty good shape. And if you look at old college pictures from the 80s, 70s, 60s, you look at them now and see how big kids are and how large kids are in high school and colleges. And there's obviously something with the processed foods. The food industry has done it, and it's too bad. Because when we grew up, I don't think we eat any different. I guess we do, but I guess all this processed food has just made us a bigger, heavier nation.
I can't believe. I'm so glad you're talking about this. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day at the gym who's a chiropractor, super nice guy. Literally said the same thing, Tim. He was like, this obesity epidemic in the U.S., and he had just gotten back from Europe, and they had been there for a while. And he said, in Europe, there are 1,000 banned ingredients that they cannot have in their food, but we can have in ours. He said, so if you buy a box of cornflakes in Germany, Kellogg's cornflakes.
Right.
If you read the panel on what's in it, it's different over there than what's over here. And I mean, that has to be the issue, right? Like the food source has to be the issue.
When you and I were in Spain, we noticed that right away. Remember, we saw the school kids and the people on the street. Because they ate, they ate well. They ate late at night. They ate fat, and you and I both said, God, everybody here looks so fit and healthy. And it's obviously however we produce our food or the food supply. I don't know why the government doesn't spend time doing that sort of thing. Somebody just mentioned to me that they saw the new freshman class at one of the schools, and they couldn't believe how overweight a lot of the kids were.
Wow.
The freshman class. But so anyway. On that happy note, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
This comes to us from a listener, David in Pennsylvania, who is getting a pair of socks for this. But this is one of my favorite things, and I'm so glad he sent it our way because you and I love found treasure. This is the king of the found treasure. So it's a rare copy of the U.S. Constitution was found in North Carolina in a filing cabinet. Okay, so I'll just start there. It's a printed copy of the Constitution discovered in North Carolina by a family in their filing cabinet. It's expected to fetch millions at auctions. It's signed by Charles Thompson, a Philadelphian who served as Secretary of the Congress of the Confederation. And the document is one of only 8 known surviving signed copies of the Constitution that were sent to the 13 original states for ratification. It is the only one that remains in private hands. The last recorded sale of a similar document occurred over 130 years ago. I think about that. Wow. So the broadsheet, it's printed, includes a copy of George Washington's 1787 letter asking the leaders of the newly formed states to put their individual interests aside. This is a key part here. Put your interests aside for the greater good of all. Bidding has already started $1 million and is expected to fetch or stretch into the tens of millions. So here's the origin of this. The rare document was found while cleaning out historic Hayes Farm in North Carolina. The 184-acre plantation was the former home of Samuel Johnston, who served as governor of North Carolina from 1787 to 1789 and presided over the state's 2 ratification conventions. In 2022, a family that had lived in the farm or the home for 7 generations was preparing the estate to be used as a public historic site when they discovered the copy of the Constitution in a yellow file folder in a storage room. I mean, that's how this happens, right? It's an OPTAG folder or something.
Right.
The find was especially surprising since many of Johnston's historic documents had already been given to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill 4 decades earlier. The auction is expected to take place this past weekend on September 28th. And it's going to take place 237 years after the Congress of the Confederation meeting in New York as the country's governing body resolved to send the Constitution to the states for debate. So there you go. I mean, what an amazing thing to come across a document like this that has such value, right?
So will it go to auction and then?
Yes,
I guess
it's going to be.
So anybody can buy it, or
it went to auction, meaning it happened this past weekend. Pre-auction, the numbers were already closing in on $1 million plus, and yes, it's in private hands. So either an institution can buy this, a museum or an archive, or an individual can, but all the other copies are apparently accounted for and probably in museums or archives.
Wow. Yeah, you wonder how these things. So when somebody dies, don't just throw everything away. I guess you got to look. I wonder. I wonder.
Star Wars trading cards, Tim. Star Wars trading cards.
Well, that's a good one because I doubt I'll find a copy of the Constitution in my parents' attic, but I guess you never know what you find. Did you photograph some of the cards?
I'm working on it, and I'm getting ready to send the appraiser or this woman that I met just to see where it goes. Tim, you may find something different when you clean out things. You may find the deed to all the houses on Jeremy Swamp Road.
Yeah, who knows? Listen, these cards could be your retirement, Nash. You could be sitting on Easy Street.
We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll
wah,
see.
wah, wah. You eat or.
No,
you gotta be positive.
I don't mean to put a damper on it, but the more I've investigated the card market, the like sports cards or Star Wars cards, it is a bit of a racket. And the company that certifies the cards, they're the ones that control the amount of cards that are in the market that are certified at a certain level. So it's sort of a racket.
If you thought Comic-Con was crazy, go to one of these card conventions, Nash.
Yeah, true.
Let's see. Mine caught my eye, obviously very different. The headline is Disorderly Passenger Ordered to Pay Airline $6,000 for Wasted Fuel after the flight was forced to divert. This is a 33-year-old who was flying from Perth to Sydney in Australia. And they didn't say exactly what he did, but he had unruly behavior. And this happened a year ago. And they were trying to figure out what to do. And finally, he went to trial. And he finally did plead guilty to a couple of offenses. They didn't say exactly what he did that made the plane turn around. But a year later, he was ordered to pay $6,000 to cover the fuel cost because the airline had to, when they turned around to go back to land, had to dump most of the fuel in order for them to land. So they said, the only thing they said is he was charged with disorderly behavior on the aircraft and a failure to comply with safety instructions. So when the flight was diverted, he was ordered to pay back the airline for the fuel, for the cost of fuel that was wasted. They said that he was, aside from the $6,000 that he had to pay in fuel costs, he was also fined an additional somewhere around $6,000 with the Australian exchange, just as an additional fine. They said he pled guilty to two offenses. One was one count of disorderly behavior, and one was failure to comply with instructions. Again, they didn't release the guy's name. They didn't release the airline either. But they said more and more that the Australian police and they said other governments now are really cracking down on people that exhibit this sort of behavior in the sky, that it's not going to go with just a simple warning or you're not going to be able to fly forever. And it gave a couple of examples. It said in November of 2023, a woman flying from Phoenix to Honolulu was ordered to pay $40,000 to American Airlines for disorderly behavior. Same issue in terms of the plane having to divert. They said she was fined for use of profanity and threatened the crew and passengers on board. They ultimately decided to return to Phoenix. And of course, then it had to reroute a bunch of other flights. They had to dump fuel, if you can imagine, the long haul from Phoenix to Honolulu. They said there was another flight from Dallas to Fort Worth where the guy was fined $81,950 by the FAA. He allegedly pushed a flight attendant and attempted to open the cabin door. They said this was the largest fine in FAA history. And they said they're now coming, they've come forward since 2021.
Everyone does celebrity.
And they're really trying to make people understand there's going to be a zero tolerance policy in the air, that they're not going to allow this stuff to continue, because there just seems to be all of this craziness that goes on in the air on the airlines.
I wonder how they calculate the fine. And when you say something like they have to dump the fuel.
Yeah.
So this is something they're doing while airborne. The fuel is stored in the wings of the plane.
You have to take the fuel out.
And that's basically dumping kerosene into the atmosphere, because isn't jet fuel almost like a derivative of kerosene or something? And it's not cheap.
No. It's very strong. And on those long haul flights, that was the problem. That was the issue with 9/11, with those terrorists. They knew to pick flights that were leaving from Boston, New York, D.C. sort of area to head west, because they knew they'd be loaded with fuel. So when
Heavy.
you turned around, right, they'd be heavy, and that they would also, when they crashed, create far more damage as they did with the buildings because they were loaded with jet fuel. So, yeah, you can't land a plane if you're loaded with fuel, or at least it's not as safe as if you're.
No, and they
You have
often
less-
plan to land
Yeah.
lighter than they take
Yeah.
off. Yeah. So I wish we knew what the guy did.
They just said disorderly conduct. So who knows? He could have been drunk, right? Or obviously it was something to turn the plane around. So,
Something major, right?
yeah. I mean, I've been on planes where people have been drunk and
Yeah.
they've tried to control them. And generally they just, calm down. There was one guy, I think I told you that I was flying with Mahoney. It was late at night. We were flying from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. And probably somewhere over Nevada, the curtain flies open, and this guy in disheveled suit from first class comes down with 2 bottles of wine and wine glasses. He's going to serve the economy class wine.
Serve the peasants some wine.
And he wakes up this one woman. She's like, "No, I don't want anything. No. Oh, come on, have a drink." And he spills the bottle of red wine all over her, like cream-colored suit. She's screaming. They're trying to get it cleaned. And Mahoney and I are giggling, laughing. So we're
I
a little
can't believe
further
you
back.
saw that happen. That is
Oh,
crazy.
yeah, Mahoney goes, this one's going to serve. But the flight attendants got quiet. They had sat down. I guess he got up and decided he was going to serve the plane wine. And we heard her scream, and we heard the crash of the glasses and the spilling of the wine. And
Hey, Tim, another you, Mahoney, Karen Allen. I was telling a story to Bob about a Detroit auto show and a massive pile of luggage because of a problem at the airport.
yeah.
And no one could get their bags until later because of this big pile. And
Huge snowstorm.
She's climbing all over the pile trying to find her bag, and you and Mahoney are like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We'll go to Banana Republic or something."
Yeah.
She's like, "I'm not an off the rack kind of gal."
I'm not
Is
an
that-
off the rack gal. I can't go to Banana Republic and Gap and get a pair of khakis and a polo like you two. She needed her
just ruined
makeup. She needed all her stuff.
I need that suitcase. Yeah.
That was when there was a huge storm. I mean, one of our Japanese colleagues got free airfare for life on, it might have been United, because he was one of those people where they did the story, you may remember, where they sat in the tarmac for like 14 hours
Yes. Yeah.
and was
14
stranded.
hours. Think
So
about that.
anytime he flew, he got immediate first class, and that was part of the class action suit. But that was a disaster. That horrible flight. I never would have done that flight again. I'd have just gone home and waited.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
I'm not an off the rack.
off the rack gal.
Those are the days, huh?
Yes. So, Mr. Nash, without further ado, we have a business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Born today, October 2nd, in 1873, in Holden, Maine, which is way up there, is Marcus L. Urann, or Urann, Urann. How would you say that? Urann.
Uran.
Urann. Because you and I often get corrected by people.
Well, this one's a hard one, but I think the 2 N's would be Uran.
Right. He's known as the father of the canned cranberry log, and also one of the founders of Ocean Spray. Now, I'll give the caveat beforehand because we mentioned it before. I boycotted Ocean Spray because of my time at Subaru when I was working with the American Canoe Association. And Ocean Spray, and Subaru was a sponsor of the American Canoe Association. And Ocean Spray wanted to be a sponsor as well, but the caveat was they had to drop Subaru because of Subaru's policies of marketing to the LGBTQ consumer, or the gay and lesbian consumer. And to the credit of the American Canoe Association, they told them to go pound sand, that they were staying with Subaru. So I'd always boycotted Ocean Spray. But that was, probably 25 years ago or so now. And so I went and I looked, and I won't buy Ocean Spray juice or anything, but I thought I'm going to go look at their website. So I did go look at the Ocean Spray website, and they appear to have changed their ways, and it looked like they've got a much more inclusive in the DEI hiring practices and all the other things that you'd expect. So it looks like that perhaps that management from 25, 30 years ago has changed their mind or is a little different. And we understand that happens. So Many of you have heard that over the years about my Ocean Spray thing. So maybe now I can buy Ocean Spray.
Okay.
But so Marcus, he decided, so he was part of the cranberry industry where he grew cranberries in his father's, the family had a cranberry bog or cranberry farm. And so they call him the father of the canned cranberry sauce. And I was trying to read more and more about how this all came about and about cranberries, because there's not a lot written about him. And they said that in 1930, he had convinced competitors for this other company called A.D. Makepeace Company, which was the largest grower of cranberries at the time, based in New Jersey, to form a cooperative called the Cranberry Canners. And so a group of these people, there were 3 people that got together and formed this National Cranberry Association. And in 1957, they decided to call their name, instead of the individual companies that made up this organization, Ocean Spray. And so that's where they got the name from. And so today there's over 700 individual growers that are part of this cooperative. I had no idea, but most of the cranberries are grown in Massachusetts and Wisconsin. I had no idea Wisconsin.
Certainly. I had no idea Wisconsin was a big one.
Yeah, so this co-op that they did was very important, and what they did is they turned their methods from dry to wet harvesting for cranberries. They said cranberries grow in sandy, acidic soil and require a long dormant period in the long, cold winters. So areas like Massachusetts and Wisconsin were perfect for it. Also some parts of Washington, Oregon, and New Jersey. And they said half of the world's cranberries come from Wisconsin. I would have never guessed that. I would have guessed that they came from Massachusetts.
Half of the world's cranberries come from Wisconsin.
Come from Wisconsin, right.
Wow.
And they said 90% of the cranberries today are harvested by the wet method, which means that they float and it helps separate the berry from the vine instead of actually going and trying to comb them like you would with blueberries.
So I wonder like there's cranberry bogs, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And I wonder if they somehow control the amount of water in the bog and they let more in to increase that, and then the berry would separate from the plant and just float, and that's how they rake them up somehow? I don't know.
Yeah, they said they went into a long explanation about it, which we won't bore folks with it, but essentially...
Bore me. It's like me. I'd like to know about that building, please.
Yeah, they said the water helps to separate the berry from the vine because there's little pockets of air inside the berry that help it float at the top of the water. So, and then they go into the actual harvesting of it. They said that although canning began and juicing began in 1912, it wasn't until 1941 that the jellied cranberry log that we all know and love became available. And of course, it's been on Thanksgiving tables ever since. So this is where Marcus Uron came up with the jellied cranberry log that we all know in the can of the Ocean Spray can of cranberry sauce. Said Americans gobble down 5 million gallons of it each year. It says the Ocean Spray term for the cranberry jelly that retains the shape of the can as it plops out into the serving dish is known as jelly cranberry. They said the volume equates to 4 million cranberries, or there are 200 berries per can in each one of those little cans of cranberry sauce that we get. They said the canned product is a bit like its cousin Spam. It says it's sort of it has a lowbrow perception, but a majority of the people really love it. It's easy to slice into any desirable thickness. It's got a little sweet, and delicious. It can be cut into shapes. People will sometimes use cookie cutters to cut them into shapes to make garnishes for casseroles and other baked goods. And they said that most families, even though people will sometimes make cranberries from scratch, that most people will have this cranberry log on their table. And they said only 26% of the Americans will make their own sauce. The rest of it is usually canned, and those cans are Ocean Spray. They said over the years they tried to get people to eat cranberries year-round. And that's where they came out with the craisins, remember? So instead of the craisins, they also developed a cran apple juice, which they combine cranberry and apple juice so that people would drink it year-round.
And cran grape.
Cran grape. And they also came out with the juice box, and which was the first juice blend. So
I'm looking at that thing. You know how when it comes out of the can, it does that vibrating thing? You know, if
Yep.
you get it on, whoosh, it makes that noise when it comes out. You know, it sits there and just, and then it does its thing.
Richard makes cranberries, and I'm like, why bother? They're not. Everybody loves this cranberry thing, right? I think the Ocean Spray cranberry, canned cranberry. So he's the father of the canned cranberry log. He actually was the one who came up with it, but also was the guy who put together this conglomerate with two other people to develop what we know as Ocean Spray. So Marcus Uran is our business birthday.
Good business birthday, Tim. He's not popped up before.
No,
And
he's
I love
not.
cranberry juice, yeah.
I do too. You know, it was difficult. I even had to try to track down where he or how he died. He popped up on a business birthday site that I go to, but all it had literally was the father of the canned cranberry log. That's all it said. So there's not a lot written about him other than he did form this cooperative of a bunch of cranberry growers. But beyond that, there wasn't much about him, education or anything. So
It's
sometimes
kind
you
of
don't
like
get
the
a lot of
business
info.
birthday you did where you couldn't even find a picture of the person.
Oh my God, remember that one?
Yeah,
I forget who that
yeah.
was. Yeah. So, hey, when we started the show here, we mentioned one of our teases that we were going to cover the world's most influential LGBTQ business leaders. And Fortune magazine, the business magazine, Fortune magazine, unveiled what it called its inaugural list of the top LGBTQ leaders in business. And I thought one of these lists were done before. Maybe they were, but then I was trying to think. I don't know who would have done one. Do you? Unless
I don't remember. I seem to think that there might have been a list, but maybe not. I mean, this is,
right.
of course, Tim, if you go far enough back, I remember when there was a software I used for page makeup and design called Quark Express, and that was founded by Tim Gill, and there's a Gill Foundation, and he is gay.
Right.
And he was very philanthropic. But, that's the last time I remember reading any collection of names associated with being the head of a company or whatever, or CEO and being LGBTQ.
Right. It says, while Fortune's known for its rankings, this was the first time LGBTQ chief executives and founders and other executives at companies with revenues of at least $100 million had been recognized this way. Because I looked down the list to see if we were there, and I guess the $100 million probably was the cutter for us.
That knocked us off.
Knocked us off the list. They said that 20% of those on the list were women, and it boasts a better than expected racial diversity. Two openly transgender leaders, the beauty company Coty's chief executive Sue Naby, and Martine Rothblatt, who founded the biotech firm United Therapeutics, were also notable inclusions. So when you looked down the list at anything, I guess you would be surprised. There's some that are obvious, right? Like Tim Cook, the chief executive
of Apple, Tim Cook. Yes, Tim, I was actually surprised by a number of names. So the second name on the list is Jim Fitterling. He's the chief executive and chairman of Dow Chemical. That was a surprise to me. I had not known that. Third is George Cheeks. He's the co-executive at Paramount Global Entertainment. Okay, and I could go on, but go ahead.
Right. No. It was. I looked down the list and I thought, we all know Tim Cook, and but some of the others, Beth Ford, who's chief executive at Land O'Lakes, which we always think of the famous butter or whatever. And then there were a couple of places. There was a guy named Sander Van Noordent, I guess is how you would say it. He's with a company called Randstad. And I didn't know what Randstad was, so I looked it up. It's a human resources. It's a Dutch multinational, but they're mostly related to human resources consulting and staffing. So it's like a large, like a Korn Ferry sort of thing. It sounded like, and he was on the list. And who else was on the list there?
Well, a big fashion name, Giorgio Armani.
Yeah, I was surprised by that one. I don't know why. I guess maybe I didn't know. I didn't know Armani was gay, I guess. I don't know.
Oh,
Did you
yeah,
know
yeah.
that?
I mean, it's not something that he goes out of his way to talk about, not that he has to.
Right.
But I've known that for years. But yeah, Armani, big one there. You already mentioned Sue Nabi, who is the chief executive of Coty Cosmetics. Coty's huge, and Coty does a lot of, Coty does a lot of work with private labels. It's like, so
Right.
they'll create, if, let's just say Kim Kardashian wants a scent, they'll often go to a company like Coty to kind of create the scent, package it, market it, the whole bit. So big,
Right,
big
and they
industry
also
there.
right, and they also I looked through and they did very, whether it was high end like a Etro or a Tiffany perfume. They also did things with Adidas, like you said, some branded scents in the beauty market. But I was wondering, was this the same group that also did the like Stetson and some of those things that you would find in the drugstore when they used to sell the colognes? I was trying to remember.
I want to say yes, and I'll tell you. Remember, our friend Christine years
Right.
ago worked for Coty, and they handled high end, mid range, and low
Right.
end. And if you're thinking of Stetson, like maybe it was a little glass cowboy hat with the perfume in it. I mean, yeah, they probably did. So it's a big business.
Wow. And then there was a person named Stein Eric Hagen. He was chairman of Orkla. And
Did you
I did
look
not
them
know
up?
what. Yeah, I did look them up too because I had no idea what Orkla was. Did you know what Orkla was?
No, I had never heard of them.
So it's a Norwegian conglomerate, operates in Europe, Asia, and some of the U.S. And they operate in the branded consumer goods and some financial investment sectors. They sell a large number of products within the categories of snack foods, confectionaries, biscuits, health, personal care, textiles, detergent, and painting. And so when I went to their site, I pulled up all the brands. I did not recognize one. There was not one brand I recognized, but when I would click on the logo, it would say it's a detergent or it's a paint or something, paint brand in India or something. So they would not be brands that were familiar to us per se, or at least certainly not me because I didn't recognize. For instance, there was one called, I think it was called Jif. And I thought, oh, maybe that's the peanut butter, but it wasn't.
Oh,
It was,
yeah, I
it was
remember
something
Jif.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was something
Another one
else.
on the list, though, was Antonio Simoes, who's the chief executive of something called Legal and General. And when I was looking at the list, I thought, was that his title at a company? But there's an actual insurance company called
Right.
Legal and General.
Yeah.
And their logo is like this multicolored rainbow, like We Got You Protected. So it's investments, pensions, insurance. So there are some of these businesses must be B2B or like have you ever heard of Legal and General?
No, I didn't. And it reminded me again, when I looked at it, it was, I guess it could almost be like not a Wells Fargo, because it was almost banking and insurance combined together.
Yes.
Is what it seemed
Like
like.
a
'Cause as you
Northwestern
said,
something. Yeah.
yeah, they did investment products, but they also did mortgages and pensions and annuities and life insurance and that sort of stuff. And I wondered in these companies, I guess the other part about it to me was just looking at Apple, things that we would be most familiar with probably. Apple and Land O'Lakes, maybe Paramount. But I thought, have they done anything? And maybe this is not a fair question. Apple doesn't do really any advertising anyway. But I thought, I wonder if Land O'Lakes does anything from a diversity standpoint or from an LGBTQ standpoint in terms of talking to the consumer. I don't think so.
I'm going to make
It's
a leap
butter,
of-
right?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's butter, and it's one of those things that it doesn't matter who you are. If you like butter,
Right.
you're going to use butter. And Apple, under Steve Jobs, had a long-standing house rule that they did not. Apple was notoriously non-philanthropic under Jobs.
Right.
They gave to nobody. When Tim Cook took over, they did start doing more philanthropic outreach, but it's discrete donations to organizations and charities that the company supports, but they don't do specialized advertising. Now, I mean, in terms of how they break it down, they don't do necessarily LGBTQ or African American or Hispanic or whatever. It's pretty just much a general market approach, and a lot of that tends to be out of home, digital ads, and some TV stuff.
Right.
So, because they know who their customer is, and we're going to buy their product regardless, right?
Right. Well, the last time Land O'Lakes was in the news that I remember, from a marketing standpoint anyways, when they had to remove the Indian
Yep.
from their
That's exactly right. Yeah.
box. But I wondered, if you had a phone call, I'll put you on the spot, Mr. Creative. If you got a phone call from Land O'Lakes and said, we'd like to talk to the LGBT or talk to the gay and lesbian consumer in the first person, or talk to the LGBTQ consumer in the first person, what would you do? Would you I guess you'd have to do something non-traditional. I don't know. Or maybe you do something traditional and you show up in an unexpected place.
Expected place. That's what I was just thinking. Yeah. And I think that you could easily make a campaign for Land O'Lakes that focuses on the purity of their product. Our butter is better. Our butter, A-B-I-B. R-O-B-I-B. Our butter is better. And you would go against margarines. You would go against plant-based stuff. And, you could make the case for the purity of butter, just plain old butter. And that might appeal to but yes, I agree. You would show up in surprising places with a Land O'Lakes ad.
Land O'Lakes. Fat is good.
Yeah.
Good fat. I like butter. I only use butter. I don't use margarine. I use
butter too. We've switched. We go back and forth between plant-based butter and then regular butter, but we're neither Bob nor I are worried about that aspect of our diet because I don't use enough of it to worry about it. Right? Yeah. I mean, a little bit on the toast in the morning, call it a day.
I remember when I traveled and I would have meals with Martina or whatever, and she was adamant about not putting it was butter. She didn't want margarine. She didn't want any substitute. Same with, I ordered an iced tea and I put an Equal or something and she went ballistic. She said, just put sugar in there.
Sugar in.
Don't put saccharin or
you could reference the conversation we had at the start of the show about the obesity
processed
rates.
foods.
And you could say, let's go for the stuff you could get from a farm or something like that.
Yeah. So anyway, that list, we'll post that to our Facebook page.
Good list, Tim.
Which is Focus Group Radio. So we'll post the list there so you guys can see the
top
full
10.
list. Top 10.
The
top
LGBTQ
10.
business
Someday we'll be
executives.
on the list, perhaps. We'll see.
We'll see.
Time.
Hey, friends, we're going to wrap it up there. We want to thank you for joining us today here on the Focus Group. FocusGroupRadio.com is our website. You can go there and learn about our partners, including Deep Discount. You could look at the Deep Discount logo and click on it and start your shopping experience. We want to thank them and the Criterion Collection for making September a really fun month with John Says Pick That Flick. Everybody did super well. If you're listening to the podcast and you are watching us on YouTube and you did submit something as a guest, pat yourself on the back because I was just blown away by the sheer volume of correct guesses and the number of people who played. So thank you for that. Everybody remember, if you're on the road, Tim and I like to say, don't text and drive, arrive alive. And that means don't have the phone up on the steering wheel doing a text. It's just can wait till later. Have a great week, and we will see you next week here on the Focus Group.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.